Flowers, Tea, and Carriages. Oh my! Written by Haunted Garden. Read by Arashi. Hubert is completely and utterly exhausted. It has been an odd, ridiculous, annoying day, and the only thing he wants is to creep into his chambers and curl up with his already asleep husband. So when his chamber door comes into view, he audibly sighs and opens the door as quietly as possible, so as not to wake Ferdinand, who is sitting on their couch, cup of tea in hand and frowning at the fire. In another odd turn of events, Ferdinand hears him and turns his head to meet Hubert's exhausted face. Instantly, the frown is replaced by a soft look of concern, and Ferdinand goes to stand, but Hubert waves him back, closing the door behind him. Allowing his shoulders to droop at last, Hubert unclasps his cloak and starts the long process of getting comfortable. "What are you doing still awake, my light?" When he takes Ferdinand a few moments to respond, Hubert turns around to look as he unbuttons his sleeves. The sight of his husband sat in front of the fire in their chambers, more relaxed and comfortable than anyone else will ever get to see him, and glowing from the firelight, still makes his heart sing. He does not know how he got so lucky as to have Ferdinand in his life in this way, but he is forever grateful. Hubert forces himself to focus on his husband's words rather than the way his nightshirt hangs off of his shoulders, because he hadn't bothered to button it up all the way. Had an incredibly odd day. Odd. Ferdinand nods as Hubert makes his way over to the couch and sits down beside him. Odd how? I mean it was normal, but also odd things kept happening. Hubert reaches out and pulls Ferdinand to him, his back against Hubert's chest, wrapping his arm around the man's waist. Ferdinand immediately relaxes into his hold, and Hubert leans his head against his. "I am afraid you will have to elaborate, my light." "Well," Ferdinand says, taking Hubert's free hand and playing with his fingers absent-mindedly, "this morning on my ride, I was outside the palace and a man I have never seen before fell from a tree not 50 feet from me." Hubert had never been so thankful that Ferdinand prefers to be held most nights, because right now he can't see Hubert's face. About 10 minutes after Hubert heard Ferdinand leave for his morning ride, one of his spies had knocked on the door, informing him of a potential threat, and Hubert had set out immediately. This was to be the start of his awful day. Hubert von Vestra is the minister of the imperial household, spy master, and assassin. He both enjoys and is good at what he does, so a threat, an assassin no less, to his own husband is something he should be able to handle. And yet, the assassin is in a tree not far from where Hubert is perched, and yet Hubert can't get a good view of him. Both assassins turn their heads at the sound of horse hooves, and they both reach for their weapon of choice. Hubert aims as best he can at the assassin, and the assassin aims at Ferdinand. Hubert shoots first, and he will swear on it for the rest of his life. It hits the assassin in the leg, and he falls out of the tree with a yelp just as Ferdinand passes them, and by the time Hubert is where he was, they're both gone. Hubert hums in question and starts running his hands through Ferdinand's hair. "I mean, it's not so weird, is it, love?" Ferdinand lets out a little huff. "Maybe not, but the rest of it surely was." Hubert chuckles and keeps steadily stroking Ferdinand's hair. "Oh, really?" "Yes, really. Like before my first meeting, I heard a loud crash outside my door, and when I opened it, it was that same man from before, with one of your mages glaring down at him. They had completely destroyed a lovely vase of flowers." Hubert's ears burn ever so slightly, because it was not one of his mages or spies. It was him, intercepting the assassin as he attempted to get to his husband's office. "And then I was enjoying some tea, which you did not warn me you were too busy for, by the way, when a man carrying a tea tray tripped and slipped, and the entire tray fell onto me. It was still almost boiling." The tea was poisoned, and they were going to offer some to Ferdinand, so spilling it over was necessary, although Hubert does feel a bit bad that it was still hot. "Oh, how about I had to stop some runaway carriages before it hurt anyone? Thankfully I had worked with the horses before." Hubert had no idea about that one. It must have been when he somehow got away from Hubert, and, he hates to admit it, he hadn't found him. "And then I decided to retire early because it had been so odd, and I could sign what little I needed in here after I bathed, when I was rudely interrupted by a man attempting to kill me. I am just now able to relax because I had to have someone clean up the mess from our fight and remove his body." Hubert sits up suddenly, a little panicked, and Ferdinand makes an unhappy noise about being moved around. "You were attacked? Why did you not say that first? Let me look at you." "I am fine, Hubie," Ferdinand grumbles as Hubert manhandles him to where he can check over his husband. "Just annoyed. He could not land a blow on me. That does not mean I do not want to know these things, Hubert scolds, knowing that it will devolve into some of their normal light bickering sessions as he takes care of his husband. Hubert failed spectacularly at catching the assassin, which he will mark down as an off day, but he's gone, and can't bother Ferdinand any more, which is really the important part. Besides, Hubert has to make up for missing their tea time, and that is far more enjoyable.